What happens when live television stops being entertainment and turns into a battlefield? When the lights burn too bright, the smiles turn sharp, and one careless question detonates the illusion of control. That's exactly what unfolded on an ordinary Tuesday morning, when Hollywood royalty sat across from America's golden host, and the world watched respect crumble, live and unfiltered. It didn't take a segment. It didn't even take a minute. Just 38 seconds. Enough time for a friendly interview to explode into one of the most shocking, gut-twisting moments ever broadcast on morning TV. It was one of those picture-perfect mornings on Good Morning America. Lights blazing, cameras steady, coffee in the air, and everyone smiling like the day couldn't possibly go wrong. Then Samuel L. Jackson walked in, calm, collected, sharp as ever. Years of fame hadn't dulled him. If anything, it gave him a heavier kind of gravity. He greeted the crew politely, gave a small nod to the audience, then settled into his seat with the quiet confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. Across from him sat Michael Strahan, the man of the hour. Ex-football star turned TV golden boy, flashing that signature grin that seemed to win over every guest. But this time, there was something different behind it. The studio hummed with easy chatter, but beneath the laughter, there was tension building. The countdown began. We're live in 5, 4, 3. The lights flared brighter, smiles locked in, and the illusion was complete. Good morning, America. Michael's voice rang out smooth and confident, but his eyes darted to Samuel with a hint of challenge. The audience clapped on cue. The interview started smooth, easy, like a morning routine everyone knew by heart. Samuel talked about his new movie, the stunts, the fun, the energy, and the crowd laughed in all the right places. Michael nodded along, charming as ever, tossing in jokes that made the audience giggle. Everything felt light until it didn't. He leaned in with that same easy smile, voice casual but sharp enough to cut. At your age, Sam, how much longer can you keep doing those wild action scenes? The words hung in the air a beat too long. You could almost hear the air shift. Samuel didn't answer right away. He just looked at Michael, that calm stare that felt like it could see straight through the grin on his face. Then he said, steady and low, "At my age? Funny, I didn't realize confidence came with an expiration date." A few awkward laughs rippled from the audience, the kind that try to smooth over tension but only make it worse. Michael laughed too, louder than he needed to, trying to take control back. Well, maybe passion doesn't, but knees do, right, Sam? His grin tightened. It wasn't playful anymore. It was bait. Samuel leaned back, lips curling into a small, cold smile. My knees are fine, Michael. It's respect that seems a little shaky this morning. The silence that followed hit like a slap. The crowd went still. Robin glanced sideways at George, her eyes saying everything she couldn't on live TV. George's fingers froze over his cue cards. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer whispered, "Cut to break," but nobody moved. Michael didn't back down. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes narrowing just slightly, that fake grin still glued to his face. Relax, Sam. People just want to know when the legend plans to retire, he said, his tone smooth but smug. Samuel's expression didn't change, but the silence after that line felt dangerous. Then calmly, almost too calmly, he replied, when people like you stop mistaking provocation for journalism. His words hit hard, clean, and precise. The audience went quiet, sensing something real was happening. Robin tried to step in, voice shaky. Okay, let's just... But Michael cut her off, louder now, his ego in full display. Come on, you talk big, but everyone's seen the headlines. You're slowing down, Sam. Admit it. The grin on his face was too wide, too forced, and everyone could feel the tension crawling up their spines. Samuel leaned back slightly, eyes cold, voice steady. You confuse headlines with facts, Michael. That's the problem with men who think charm can hide insecurity. The words hit like a blade wrapped in velvet. Michael chuckled, but the sound cracked halfway through. Guess I hit a nerve, huh? Didn't think Fury could lose his temper off-screen. Samuel tilted his head, a faint smirk forming. "No, Fury doesn't lose his temper," he said evenly. "He just decides who's worth his time." "You're not—" The crowd gasped softly, but Michael pushed again, desperate to claw back control. "Oh, come on. You think you can just walk in here and act untouchable? Everyone ages, Sam. The audience sees it, even if you don't." Samuel's eyes narrowed, his tone dropping lower, calmer. The kind of calm that warns a storm is coming. "You should be careful, Michael. When you spend too long trying to stay relevant, you forget how to stay respectful." Michael forced a laugh, tapping his fingers on the desk like he was unbothered, but his voice cracked around the edges. "Respect's earned, old man." That did it. Samuel leaned in, elbows on his knees, gaze locked and unflinching. "Then you're still in debt," he said quietly. For a moment, no one breathed. Robin's eyes darted to the control booth, begging someone to cut to commercial. George looked frozen, his jaw tight, his cue cards limp in his hand. The lights were still bright, but it felt like the temperature in the studio had dropped 20 degrees. Michael tried one last jab, weak but stubborn. "Guess you're proving my point. Can't take a little heat." Samuel's reply was cold, final, and sharp enough to end any argument. "The difference between us, Michael, is that you mistake heat for relevance. I've had both. You've only got one, and it's fading fast." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the cameras seemed afraid to move. Michael's voice cracked through the silence, louder and meaner than before. "Oh, come on, Sam. So what? You're just gonna walk out? Gonna storm off like a diva?" His tone dripped sarcasm, but underneath it was panic. The kind that only shows when someone knows they've already gone too far. The audience murmured uneasily, some shifting in their seats. Samuel didn't move at first. He just stared at Michael, unblinking, until the smirk on the host's face started to falter. Then, with unnerving calm, he stood up. The chair creaked softly, but in the quiet of the studio, it sounded like thunder. He reached down, fingers steady, unclipping his mic from his jacket. The tiny click echoed like a gunshot. The sound man froze mid-step. Robin's hand flew to her chest, and George's jaw tightened. Samuel's voice cut through the air, smooth and lethal. "No, Michael," he said, his tone so calm it hurt. "Divas crave attention. I'm reclaiming my dignity." Michael blinked, thrown off, his mouth half open, as if searching for a comeback that wouldn't come. Samuel didn't give him the chance. He placed the mic on the table with a soft, deliberate thud, one that felt heavier than it should, like a hammer closing a case. He leaned in slightly, enough for the camera to catch the faintest curl of a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You wanted a real moment for your show," he said slowly, each word sharp and final. "Congratulations. You just got one." The room seemed to inhale all at once, then fall dead still. Even the lights felt harsher now, throwing long shadows across the set. Michael tried to laugh, a brittle, hollow sound, but it died in his throat. Samuel straightened, adjusted his jacket cuffs like a man done with nonsense, and turned his back on him. The sound of his footsteps on the studio floor, steady, unhurried, defiant, filled the air that Michael's words had poisoned. As he reached the edge of the set, Samuel didn't look back. He didn't need to. Behind him, the crowd sat frozen, Robin whispering a quiet, "Oh my God," under her breath. Michael sat rigid, pale, the grin gone, his hands gripping the desk like he was holding on to what little dignity he had left. The cameras were still rolling, but it didn't matter anymore. The show wasn't his, not today. And as the doors closed behind Samuel L. Jackson, the only thing left in the room was the echo of that click. The sound of a man walking away with every ounce of power he came in with. The studio felt dead, not silent, dead. The applause sign blinked uselessly in the corner, but nobody dared to move. The air was so heavy it almost hummed, thick with that mix of disbelief and secondhand shame. Michael sat stiffly, trying to pretend like he was still in control, but his grin was gone, replaced by the kind of smirk people wear when they're seconds from breaking. The crowd just stared, waiting for someone to fix the wreck that was still burning on live television. Then Robin leaned forward. Her palm came down on the table, Not hard, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the air like a whip. "Michael, stop," she said. Her tone wasn't angry. It was the calm before an earthquake. "You've done enough." Michael turned toward her, his voice rising, desperate to keep his ego from collapsing. "Guess I can't handle the heat, huh?" He sneered, trying to laugh, but it came out hollow, dry, almost pleading. He glanced at the audience for backup, but no one laughed this time. The tension had shifted. The crowd wasn't on his side anymore. Robin stared at him, eyes locked, her expression cold and steady. For a second, it looked like she might stay quiet, but then she turned slowly toward the camera. Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but from fury she'd been holding in all morning. "No, Michael," she said, her words slow, deliberate, echoing through the stunned silence. "You can't handle respect." The words hit harder than any outburst could. It wasn't a shout, it was a blade. The audience gasped, a sharp collective intake of breath, and then the room erupted. Applause thundered through the set, sudden and raw, a release of everything they'd been holding in. George's pen slipped from his hand, clattering onto the desk. A woman in the front row stood up, clapping through tears, whispering yes under her breath. Michael froze, blinking like a man who'd just been slapped in front of millions. The lights glared hotter, cameras zoomed in, catching every crack in his composure. Robin didn't look away. She didn't smile. She just stared him down, breathing hard but steady, her words hanging in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Michael swallowed, his jaw tight, but no sound came out. For once, the man who always had something to say didn't. The audience was still clapping, cheering even, but it wasn't joy they felt. It was justice. And in that moment, with the cameras still rolling and the tension breaking like glass, everyone watching knew the truth. The king of morning television had just been dethroned live, and he didn't even see it coming. Within an hour, the internet was on fire. The clip of Samuel standing up, calmly removing his mic, and walking off, set played on a loop across every platform imaginable. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of them flooded with that same 30-second moment, dissected from every angle, slowed down, remixed, captioned, and memed into legend. Some added dramatic music, others zoomed in on Samuel's expression right before he said, "I'm reclaiming my dignity." The world couldn't look away. Morning TV had turned into a battlefield, and Samuel L. Jackson had just walked out of the wreckage without a scratch. The hashtags exploded. Hashtag respect Samuel Jackson. Hashtag walk with Sam. Hashtag grace under fire. Comment sections turned into war zones. One side calling it arrogance, the other calling it art. A young reporter on X, formerly Twitter, posted the line that went viral. "Samuel didn't just walk off TV, he walked into history." The post hit 1 million likes in 6 hours. Another comment, pinned to the top of a viral video, summed it up perfectly. That wasn't a walkout. That was a masterclass in grace. Meanwhile, Michael Strahan's name began trending for all the wrong reasons. Clips of him smirking, interrupting, and mocking were slowed down and shared side by side with Samuel's calm, razor-sharp responses. Fans called it career suicide in 4K. PR experts scrambled to control the damage, but it was too late. The court of public opinion had already handed down its verdict. Michael stayed silent, but silence only made it worse. Every hour he didn't speak, another article dropped, another commentator weighed in, another meme twisted the knife deeper. By the end of the day, networks were replaying the moment like breaking news. Analysts called it the interview that broke morning television. Reaction videos poured in by the thousands. Actors, journalists, and fans all praising the same thing: Samuel's composure. He didn't yell, he didn't argue, he didn't need to. He just stood up and owned the moment. And as the views hit tens of millions, one truth became undeniable. What Michael thought was just another segment had turned into the moment that would define both of their careers forever. The city moved around him like nothing had happened. Traffic lights blinking, horns echoing, people crossing streets, all unaware that a cultural earthquake had just hit. Inside the black car, Samuel sat quietly in the back seat, his reflection flickering across the tinted window. He wasn't scrolling through his phone, wasn't checking the chaos online. He didn't need to. The world was already talking, and for once, he didn't have to say a word. The driver didn't speak either. The silence felt sacred. The only sound came from the radio, the soft hum of Good Morning America replaying the aftermath. Robin's voice came through the speakers, calm but weighted with truth. "This morning," she said slowly, her tone solemn, "respect walked out of our studio, and we all saw who left it behind." The words lingered in the air like smoke. Samuel's gaze stayed fixed on the skyline outside, glass towers glinting in the sun, the city oblivious to the storm it had witnessed through screens just hours ago. A faint smile touched his lips, not smug, not satisfied, just peaceful, the kind that comes when a man knows he stood his ground and didn't have to raise his voice to win. The camera lingered on his face for a few seconds, the light catching the side of his jaw, outlining the calm in his expression. Then it began to pull back, past the car, past the street, past the endless sprawl of the city bathed in morning gold. The radio faded, replaced by a quiet, instrumental hum. The world outside was loud, messy, chaotic, but inside that car was silence, the kind of silence that says everything. As the shot widened, Samuel's silhouette grew smaller against the horizon, still calm, still unshaken. The sunlight hit his face one last time, warm and steady, the light of a man who didn't win by shouting, but by walking away. And just before the screen faded to black, his voice echoed softly, almost a whisper, half to himself and half to the world still buzzing beyond the glass. "Dignity walks." Always, if you felt that moment hit you right in the gut, the power, the silence, the dignity, don't just scroll past it. Hit like, drop a comment, and tell us what you would have done in Samuel's place. Would you walk away or fight back? Make sure to subscribe for more real-life showdowns, moments of truth, and stories that prove sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Watch, feel, think. Because every story has a moment, the one where dignity decides to walk.